Have you ever noticed that the loudest person in the room isn't always the most powerful? Think about it. When a CEO walks into a meeting, they don't always rush to speak first. When an elite negotiator sits at the table, they don't fill every second with words. And when someone truly confident enters a room, they rarely feel the need to prove it. So why do we spend our lives believing that talking more means winning more? The answer lies in one of the most misunderstood forces in human psychology: silence. Most people think silence is weakness. In reality, silence is often hidden power. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some of the most respected, influential, and successful people use fewer words, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand something that most people never do.
Imagine you're sitting in a group conversation. Everyone is talking over each other. They're trying to sound smart. They're interrupting. They're fighting to be noticed. Then there's one person. They don't interrupt. They simply listen. At first, nobody pays much attention, but something strange starts happening. As they continue listening, people begin looking towards them. Eventually, someone asks, "What do you think?" Without asking for attention, they receive it. Why? Because our brains naturally assign value to what appears scarce.
If everyone is talking, words become cheap. If one person speaks only when it matters, every sentence feels important. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. The less available something is, the more valuable it appears. That's why luxury brands don't flood the market. That's why limited editions sell faster. And that's why people who don't constantly seek attention often end up getting the most attention. Here's something even more interesting. Silence doesn't just change how other people see you. It changes how they think about you. When someone talks nonstop, your brain has no reason to wonder what they're thinking. Everything is already exposed.
But when someone pauses, when they don't immediately react, your mind starts filling in the blanks. What are they thinking? Do they know something I don't? Why are they so calm? Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates influence. Have you ever texted someone a long, emotional message only to receive, "Okay," or maybe no reply at all? Suddenly, your brain refuses to move on. You replay every sentence. You question everything you wrote.
Not because silence always means something, but because your brain hates uncertainty. Humans are wired to close open loops. When information is missing, we obsess over it. That's why unfinished stories stay in our minds. It's why cliffhangers work, and it's why strategic silence often has more psychological impact than endless explanations. But here's where most people get it wrong. Being quiet is not the same as being powerless. There's a huge difference between fearful silence and intentional silence. One comes from insecurity. The other comes from confidence. If you're silent because you're afraid to speak, people notice. Your body language gives it away. Your eyes avoid contact. Your posture shrinks. Your voice disappears. But if you're silent because you're observing, your body communicates something completely different.
Relaxed posture, steady eye contact, calm breathing. You aren't hiding, you're choosing, and choice is power. Let's imagine two job interviews. The first candidate answers every question immediately. They keep talking, they ramble, they explain things nobody asked about. By the end, even they aren't sure what they were trying to say. The second candidate hears the question, pauses for 3 seconds, thinks, then gives a clear, confident answer. Who appears more professional? Usually the second, not because they're smarter, because the pause signals thoughtfulness. Our brains often confuse calmness with competence.
This is why experienced lawyers pause before answering difficult questions, why skilled negotiators stay comfortable with silence, why experienced leaders rarely rush to fill awkward moments. They understand something most people don't. Silence creates pressure, and pressure often causes the other person to reveal more than they intended. Imagine negotiating a salary. You name your number. The employer says nothing. Many people panic. They immediately lower their request. They negotiate against themselves, not because they had to, but because silence made them uncomfortable. Now flip the situation. You state your number, and then you remain silent. Suddenly, the pressure shifts. Now they're the one deciding what to say next. One simple pause changes the entire balance of the conversation. This happens every day, not just in business, but in friendships, relationships,
And everyday conversations. People who can't tolerate silence often reveal too much. People who are comfortable with silence often learn more. Because while everyone else is busy talking, they're collecting information, and information is influence. Here's another psychological secret. The loudest people are often trying to convince others. Quiet people are often trying to understand others. Those are completely different goals. One seeks validation, the other seeks clarity, and clarity usually wins. Think about the people you've respected most in your life. A teacher, a mentor, maybe a grandparent. Were they constantly talking, or did they choose their words carefully, making every sentence feel like it mattered? Chances are you remember the people whose words carried weight, not volume. There's another reason silence is powerful: emotion. When someone insults you, your brain wants immediate revenge. You want to answer, defend yourself, prove them wrong.
But emotional reactions are predictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate. Calm people are not. When you pause before reacting, something incredible happens. Your emotional brain starts handing control back to your rational brain. Instead of reacting, you respond. And that single difference changes relationships, careers, and sometimes entire lives. History is full of leaders who mastered this, not because they never spoke, but because they knew exactly when to. They understood that influence isn't measured by the number of words you use, it's measured by the effect those words create. Here's something worth thinking about. Every time you speak, you reveal information, your opinions, your emotions, your intentions. But every time you choose to listen, you gather information. And in almost every situation, the person with more information has more power. Now, this doesn't mean you should become silent all the time. Silence isn't magic. Speaking up matters. Setting boundaries matters. Sharing ideas matters. The real skill is knowing the difference between speaking because it adds value and speaking because silence feels uncomfortable. One builds influence, the other gives it away. So the next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to fill every pause. Listen a little longer.
Observe a little more. Let curiosity replace the need to impress. Because confidence doesn't rush. It doesn't compete for attention. It doesn't shout to prove its worth. Real power is often invisible. It's the person who stays calm when everyone else is emotional, who listens when everyone else is arguing, who thinks when everyone else is reacting. And maybe that's the greatest paradox of all. The people who need attention chase it. The people who already have power rarely do. So before your next conversation, ask yourself one question. Are you speaking to be heard, or are you listening to become unforgettable?